Let's finally settle the score on color theory. You've probably been told things like, up to 90% of consumers evaluate a brand or a design based on color alone. And according to studies, yeah, that's pretty true. But there are various different problems that designers need to be aware of when it comes to color theory. And you won't want to miss out on this knowledge pertaining to colour. In 1974, K.W. Jacobs demonstrated red to be more stimulating than green, and green more stimulating than blue. According to this study, a person left in a red room is constantly stimulated with heightened awareness and elevated heart rate. And in 1981, Richard Kuhler showed in studies that colour had a great effect on EEG readings and heart rate, as well as emotional perceptions of objects. So colour does have a direct physical response on our bodies and can actually play on our emotions. But here's the first very important thing you want to keep in mind as a designer. It isn't necessarily the colour that's important. Brightness and low saturation creates a soft feeling, whereas dimness and high saturation creates a hard or strong feeling. Also, weaker contrast and weaker saturation conveys calmness as opposed to a stronger contrast and saturation, which convey activity. It's why pastel colours are often given to baby things, or are considered by some to be calming, because they lack saturation. And as you can see, things do start to become a bit tricky when it comes to the use of colour and colour theory, but only if you don't properly absorb the content in today's video and potentially you do take some notes. Let's just say, hypothetically, we're making a design for an insurance company. Now it could be a logo, a brochure, whatever it is. Using this knowledge, you might then choose 1. Low saturation and 2. Weak contrast. These decisions will convey a sense of calmness, which is great for conveying to the target audience that they're in safe hands, and that yes, they will purchase 100 years of your finest insurance. Knowing the message or feeling you want to send out with your design allows you to then select things like saturation, contrast, and brightness. But let's go deeper with colour theory even yet still. In common colour theory, you've probably heard this 1,000 different times. The colour red relates to danger, but also to passion and lust, blah blah blah. Yes, to some extent this is true, of course. But get this, we already know that from the study mentioned earlier that red creates a heightened sense of stimulation. Being stimulated like that does a few things. Some of those things include changes in breathing patterns, pulse, blood pressure, and muscle tension. Okay, cool, but where does that even fit into graphic design? So when people are at this level of stimuli, they are more likely to recall something and to form memory loops. It's like mini trauma, and our brains are designed to latch onto trauma from a survival point of view. Many brands and many designs use red or similar colours to grab attention and to create hard, solid memories to their audience. Think of brands like CNN or Target as example. So for the UI and UX designers out there, HubSpot ran a study on the effect of switching website call to action buttons from green to red, and they got some very, very conclusive results. The red button outperformed the green button by 21% in terms of click-through rate, which is pretty major in the business world. Color theory can be fiddly and it can be precise at times. For example, combining a vibrant red and green together can end up being unpleasant to the eye. But if you lighten the red to a soft pink and then make the green less saturated and slightly darker, it then becomes a decent color palette, one that is immediately memorable and visually appealing to use. There is a spanner I could throw into the works right here. Culture. Culture plays a vital role in how people feel towards color. Red typically denotes love in the West. In Japan, however, red is associated with wrath and anger. There are many different examples of how different cultures use and feel towards color, but here's yet another spanner to throw into the works. Age and gender. Studies have shown that women tend to prefer softer, more pastel colors, whereas men prefer bolder colors. It's important to note that this is just an average and won't apply to everyone in a group, but when making designs and decisions on those designs, we aim to kind of appeal to the majority of a target audience and not just the minority. This should tell you that you absolutely must know your target audience in terms of their age, gender, location, what they like and dislike, and what you want them to feel with your design. In doing so, you can then pick colors that do actually work, but not just colors, the saturation, the brightness, the contrast, and all of that good stuff.
So let's quickly make one design but in two very different ways by using what we've talked about in today's video in regard to color theory. And yes, I am actually a bit sick at the moment and I probably am going to be okay by the time you watch this video. But for the first design, this is something for a chic and exclusive and upmarket fashion magazine. Now for this kind of design, I might want to consider that a chic and upmarket design does not want to be loud and over the top. And that's because it's trying to appeal to a more refined and more sophisticated kind of person. So it does need to be more classy, more refined and more sophisticated in terms of the color. With that in mind, a muted color palette with low saturation would be a very good idea. So this base image has had its saturation lowered and it's mainly seen in grayscale. But if I add in the magazine title, I've also then gone ahead and used a gray kind of color and it's not saturated. This keeps in line with my theory, and we will soon see a totally different version of this design. But finally, we're going to add in minor text, and this does need some saturation and contrast just to stand out and be legible. But yeah, this design as a whole is refined, it's sophisticated, and it's simple. But what if we're making the same kind of design, but aimed towards readers or viewers who might be teenagers or just not into the chic and expensive side of fashion? Well, we can then decide to slap on some saturated bold colors to create a kind of a loud statement, and then use a title that is also very bold and very impacting. We can then continue the rest of the typography in a similar way, and as you can see guys, the same essential design can look very different and appeal to two very different audiences simply by considering color. And yes, okay, you've got me, I was sneaky and did use different typography too, but hey, I'm a designer and I just can't really help myself. But yeah, that's how you can consider saturation, hues, brightness, all that good stuff when it comes to color theory and the audience.
And in the video seen on screen now, I actually go into depth on how color theory plays into logo designing. So if you want to learn something really interesting and helpful about that, just click the video on screen. And until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.